Bibliophiles of the internet, my name's Adriana, and today I'm here to share with you my February wrap-up. So last month I took part in Feminist Lit February, which basically means all month long I read books about women, written by women, or both, and that turned out to be a great choice. The first book I read was The Girl Who Soared Over Fairyland and Cut the Moon in Two by Catherine M. Valente. This installment is about September itching to go on another grand adventure, but she can't find a way into Fairyland, and no one from Fairyland is coming to get her either, so she becomes afraid that it's about growing up and maybe outgrowing her sense of adventure, and that's her main obstacle in this book. I've said it before, but I love where Fairyland's unique brand of nonsense stems from. Everything's so outside of the box and one of a kind, but each new character and phenomenon stems from a place of such emotional truth. What's on the page is so obviously fantastical, but what's behind it is real emotion. And September's character arc in this book is incredible. It's a thing of beauty because you get to see her grappling with growing up and also reconciling the fact that being an adult doesn't mean that you stop believing in something bigger than yourself. Such a great addition to the series. I loved it and I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I read Girls in the Moon by Janet McNally. This is kind of like new wave Sarah Dessen type contemporary about a girl named Phoebe whose parents used to be these huge rock stars in a really successful band, but once they started a family they kind of broke up the band and got a divorce. Now Phoebe's older sister Luna is starting her own musical career in a rock band, possibly dropping out of school, which is not what their mom wants, so Phoebe is sent off to New York to try and mend this rift between the women in her life. I went into this wanting to love it, getting such good vibes from the opening chapter, but ultimately this story was astonishingly unmemorable in every sense of the word, and it was such a disappointment. I think the problem is the main character, Phoebe, who is such a nobody. She is the least interesting character, she has the least at stake, and she has the least amount of conflict. She might be an incredible lyricist, which would have tied back in with her family. She kind of has a thing for her sister's bass player. She wants to meet up with her dad in New York, but like none of those things have any kind of significant impact. She doesn't really feel like the main character here, and you don't get to know her as much as you get to know the people surrounding her, the other main players in the story. And there's also these side stories and side conflicts that never really tie in with the overarching plot and end up not really mattering. So this story really suffers from a lack of focus, and ultimately that's why I gave it 2.5 stars. Then I read Everyday Sexism by Laura Bates. This is nonfiction. It's an exploration of the millions of ways sexism is embedded in our culture, in our systems of power, and in our day-to-day lives. The book combines real-life testimonials with reported instances of sexism, examples from the media, and a ton of horrifying statistics with the goal of forcing us to confront sexism, its perpetuation, and its acceptance. This book put me through the ringer, and what gets me is that it's so damn necessary. It's so easy in 2017 to become complacent, to allow others to lull you into a false sense of security and make you question how much of a need there is for feminism. There's this idea that women and people of other marginalized identities have achieved equality and that they're afforded the same opportunities and comforts as anyone else just because they're allowed outside of the house and can get paid for their work. Like, no, that is simply not true. Sexism is so embedded in the conversations we hold, in the interactions we have. It's common in the workplace, it's perpetuated in ads and in the media, and we are so deep in it that we need to take a step back. This book is that step back. It's like a compilation of receipts. It forces you to confront how much difficult work there is still left to do. One of my favorite quotes in here says about sexism, it's exhausting and it's endless, and in a way that describes how this book feels, but it's not without hope. It shows that there are people out there fighting to dismantle sexism who won't stand for it, and honestly, those testimonials brought me to tears. This is a holds no punches expose on the endless ways society has failed and continues to fail women, and about how we're nowhere near done yet. It's not perfect, it's not the most inclusive take on feminism, but it is well researched and powerful. I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I read Bestiary by Donica Kelly. This is a poetry collection where Donica Kelly is striving to describe love, loss, pain, and desire by turning to a lot of nature-based imagery and concepts. Even beyond that, she taps into these concepts of the mythical and fantastical to describe these almost otherworldly phenomena. This is a raw, powerful exploration of existing and feeling, and I love how Donica Kelly reaches into the fantastical to describe these almost cliched emotions because it brings the collection that much more depth. It's like these experiences can't fully be captured with the words and descriptors we have access to in our real world. So when she describes lovemaking as the formation of a chimera or heartbreak as the siren song breaking across the rocks, it just all makes sense and resonates. Overall, I really enjoyed this collection and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson. This is own voices about a character named August who is returning to her hometown of Brooklyn because of her father's death, and while she's there, all these memories of her childhood come to the surface. This story is short, but it's visceral, it's lyrical, it's heavy, it has that hazy, murky, dreamlike feel of wading through memory, these moments and ideas that we've manipulated and hoarded as we transition from childhood to becoming an adult. At its essence, this story is about how much of ourselves and our identities we invest in our homes and how we eventually come to define ourselves by them. August is confronting the fact that home never needed her. It never needed her specifically to function, and once she left, it just kept moving on. And the narration is almost lamenting a sense of innocence and wonder that you can never get back. It's about those moments where the world creeps in and suddenly you know too much, you've seen too much, and you'll never be the same. This was a really fascinating read, and I gave it 4 stars. And finally, I read The Abyss Surrounds Us by Emily Skrutsky. This is queer sci-fi about a character named Cassandra who's trained her entire life to fight alongside reckoners, which are these huge genetically engineered sea monsters. They were created to protect and escort cargo ships and other precious vessels as they cross the pirate-infested Neo-Pacific, but on her first solo mission, Cassandra is captured by a merciless band of pirates. I was surprised by how much I loved this story. I inhale read it and it was so hard to convince myself to put it down at the end of each day. The story is fast-paced, action-packed. It has a fantastic romantic element between Cassandra and a lady pirate named Swift, and they have this A+ slow burn, hate to love dynamic that is handled extremely well. I just really enjoyed how self-aware this story is. For instance, Cassandra recognizes the power imbalance between her and Swift and refuses to make a move until they're both considered equals. The story also addresses privilege and why these specific vessels and organizations and groups of people have such precedence that the government essentially created sea monsters to ensure their safe delivery. So Cassandra has to confront these ideas of privilege and morality that she's grown up with her entire life. This book has everything you could want from a futuristic pirate adventure story with ladies loving ladies, but it makes you think and it surprises you along the way. My only problem is that Cassandra doesn't resist enough when she's captured. She's upset that she failed her mission, but she doesn't really spare a second thought for her family, her job, her organization, this entire world that she comes from. I think she falls into life aboard a pirate ship a little bit too easily, and I would have liked to see more internal conflict about that. But overall, I really enjoyed this. Can't wait for the sequel, and I gave this one 4 stars. So those are all the books I read last month. If you have any thoughts on them, if you've read any of them, please feel free to sound off in the comments below. But that is everything I had for this wrap up today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye!